Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, we are going to be discussing new decks to look out for in the coming months / year or so for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. The reason I did want to do this is because currently in the OCG, which is fairly similar to Master Duel, or more similar to Master Duel than the TCG, there's an interesting meta, I will say, that's going on, where Splight and Terror Elements have basically become the best decks of the format. Splight is absolutely everywhere, and considerably could be, I should say, could be considered tier 0, but Terror Elements are definitely up there as well. Very similar to something like Dragon Ruler and Spellbooks, in the way that those two had interacted in the past. So, with that in mind, I figured, hey, let's go over some of the decks that should be coming out pretty soon, not only in the TCG, but also after the TCG in Master Duel. So, first of all, Exo Sisters. Exo Sisters is the newest deck that we will be getting in Master Duel, and their whole strategy is to XZ spam, but in a rather unique way. They actually want to XZ summon on the opponent's turn, because all of their XZ monsters actually use their effects on the opponent's turn, or more specifically on the turn that they are summoned. So, the idea is all of the main deck monsters have the effect to special summon an XZ monster using itself as material if your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard. Very, very nice. If something is called Abide, if something is DD Crowed, if something is reborn from the graveyard, etc., etc. However, they can also just hard make these monsters as well, and they have a lot of ways to search out their cards. Casp allows the deck to search out a monster, and Mika allows them to search out a spell or trap. This is both very, very good, and allows them to search out something like Pax with the spell or trap, and Pax can search out the entire deck, as well as something like Ellis, which can special summon itself if you control an Exo Sister monster. However, the two cards that we are not getting in Master Duel, for at least right now, are Malfa as well as Litania. These two cards are really what make the deck go round. Reason being, Malfa allows us to more easily go into a second XZ monster. We can search her out with Casp, and then have her special summon out herself as well as Ellis, in order to go into another XZ monster, which then allows us to go into the boss monster of Magnifica. And Litania allows us to target banish and either non-target banish or XZ summon on our opponent's turn, allowing us to get powerful effects from our XZ monsters. However, we don't have either of these, which makes it a lot more difficult to go into Magnifica. Magnifica is magnificent because of the fact that it non-target banishes. Just you detach material, non-target banish. Also, as a quick effect, you can special summon out one of your XZ monsters, notably something like Mika, which can also target banish. So the general idea is banish cards your opponent controls instead of something like negate, which is honestly very, very solid, especially when it's a non-targeted banish. On top of the fact that they are able to shut down the extra deck with any of these guys down here, makes them very strong. However, since we don't have Malfa as well as the Litania, the power level is significantly weaker and it is significantly more inconsistent. But when those arrive, they will be a deck to contend with. However, I expect them to come after Splight. So let's talk about a different deck. A deck that already in the TCG is seeing a lot of success, Punk. Now, Punk is kind of the reason for the success. If you've already seen my video where I played Punk with Halqifibrax, it's still very similar, where Punk is more so just an engine to get to powerful XZ monster, or not XZs, powerful Synchro monsters, or Halqifibrax, or what have you. They're just another engine piece, very similar to something like the Adventure Engine. And in fact, they can be paired alongside the Adventure Engine very well. The reason for this in the TCG right now is thanks to Dear Note. I know it says Dianote up there. It's Dear Note. But this card is absolutely crazy. First of all, you can special summon it by revealing a punk monster in your hand, or one other punk monster in your hand. Then you can either special summon this card or the punk monster that you revealed and send the other to the graveyard. However, the more important fact is the fact that if it is sent to the graveyard from the field, you can target a punk in the graveyard and special summon it. This allows you to basically recur your advantage if you go for a link summon or a synchro summon, all of which is very, very good. On top of the fact that Foxy Tune can basically just do this off of any card and itself, allowing you to special summon out the Dianote or the Xiaomin. It's very solid, especially with the Adventure Engine. But yeah, Xiaomin allows you to search out any of your punk cards. So all in all, very strong in the deck as a whole. Also, with the introduction of the vampire zombie, or the zombie vampire, it makes the level 8 punk monsters a little bit better, just because this card is absolutely crazy and does some really weird but powerful things in the meta currently. Also, they will be getting new support in the TCG with the field spell Extreme Session, as well as Dragon Drive, the level 8 synchro monster, which is very, very nice. So the field spell, pretty simply, once per turn, banish a punk card from the grave to special a punk from your hand. If a psychic monster you control pays life points to activate, you could draw a card. It just more advantage, allows you to special summon by recurring, or by getting rid of the advantage that you had already used. So just all in all, very, very solid card. It doesn't like search a card or anything like that, but it is good for additional advantage. On top of that, we have the Jam Dragon Drive, which is now potentially something that you can actually go into off of a Deer Note and any of your level 3s, where if it is synchro summoned, you can special summon a punk, or special summoned by punk card effect. You can pay 600 to add a level 3 from your deck, or send it to the grave. So it's just another way to get more cards into rotation. And since it doesn't specifically say a punk card, but a level 3 psychic monster, it can be splashed in a lot of other strategies. Also, if your opponent activates a card in response to a punk card activation, while this is in your graveyard, you can special summon it. So all in all, just very, very solid. I think it also gains the effect when it is special summoned to add a punk, even if it's special summoned by its own effect. Don't quote me on that, but it could have that effect. So yeah, it's just a nice search for the archetype, and kind of a combo extender. Especially if you already have this into rotation, you could special summon out this guy, search out a level 3, and then banish a punk to special summon, and then you can go into your level 11. The next one that I wanted to talk about is, once again, not Splight. It is Therion. Therions make a lot of different strategies playable and can kind of be splashed in a whole bunch of different decks. The reason for this is because of the fact that Regulus only requires a machine or a Therion in order to basically become an Omni Negate, which is absolutely crazy. So, this card, let's talk about him. First of all, you can target a Therion or a machine monster in the graveyard, special summon this card, and equip the monster to this card. Then, if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can send a Therion monster card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard to negate the effect. It is an Omni Negate, on legs, and it special summons itself. On top of that, a Therion monster equipped with this card gains 700 attack. Also, it can activate the second effect listed above as if it were King Regulus. So, what this means is basically any of your Therions with a King Regulus attached have an Omni Negate, which is pretty nice. So, this basically means that machine decks, as well as Therion decks, get a little bit stronger thanks to having this Omni Negate. And it just makes it pretty splashable, seeing as how you don't need that many cards in order for this to work. Moving on, we also have Lily Borea, which is another Therion. All of them have the first effect, except instead of it being a Therion and a machine, it is whatever attribute they might be. So, or, sorry, type. So this one is a plant, so you can target a plant, special summon this card, equip the monster. This one allows you to send a card from hand or field to the graveyard, just any card, to add a Therion spell or trap from your deck to your hand. There are a lot of good Therion spell or traps, so that's pretty nice. We have Duke Yule. This card is the psychic one. However, its secondary effect just protects it from card destruction. So it's okay, but it's not great. We have Bulls, which its second effect, or sorry, it's the warrior one. It is level 7, notably. All of the rest are level 8s. And it can target a card, a Therion card you control, and a card your opponent controls to destroy them. This one's probably the weakest of the effects, given the fact that it has to target a Therion card specifically, and it does target and destroy. Not the greatest, but it's not bad. Then we have Reaper. During your opponent's turn, you can target a Therion card in your spell and trap zone, and a card your opponent controls, return them to the hand. This one's also kind of weak. However, it's not bad to equip to something like a Regulus. Regulus, with a Therion in hand, potentially, can send the Therion to the graveyard, and then have the Reaper effect attached to it as well, which is still not bad. You can either bounce a card, you can Omni Negate, there's a lot of options with that. So it's not bad, and I think it's played at like 1 potentially. But the main reason, the main cards to play are Lily and Regulus. Moving on to the spells and traps, we have a Foolish Burial for the Archetype. Also, if it's in the graveyard, you can target a Therion card in your graveyard. If both cards are still in the graveyard, add either that card or this card to your hand. Place the other on the bottom of the deck. So basically, it just means it recurs itself. Yeah, that's basically it. You can return this guy to the grave. Return this guy to the hand. You could return him to the bottom of the deck. You can add back one of your Therions. Just all in all, very solid card. We have Therion Charge. This one's not nearly as played. You send a Therion card or an Endless Aggro or an Endless Engine system from hand or your face-up spell or trap card zone specifically to draw 2 cards. It's kind of like Trade-In, but specifically for Therions, and it is any Therion card and this. So it's not like terrible, and it also does set up your grave, but it's just like a little bit clunky, so you're not running it normally at 3, just because you're splashing this engine in into other engines. We have Disc Coliseum. Search, it adds a Therion from deck to hand. Also, once per turn, if any monster of your monsters would be destroyed by battle, you could send a Therion card or an Endless Engine to the graveyard from the deck. Not from the hand, from the deck. Also, once per turn, if a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you could target a Therion in your graveyard, add it to your hand. Absolutely crazy. It dumps the material, and then immediately after adds it back to your hand. So, very, very solid. Also, it adds the card, so yeah, all in all, a very solid card. Then we have 2 trap cards, which are trap cards and not very good. This one basically allows you to recur your materials, and basically just allows you to get a Therion with an equip twice, once with the activated effect and then once with the banished effect. And then we have this one, which can negate an effect, and banish a monster. That's basically it. Just negate and banish. That's basically it. Then we have 3 cards that are not quite in the TCG, but will arrive shortly. We have Therion Irregular. This one, targets up to 3 Therions in the graveyard, and equips them to itself while special summoning itself. This means you could potentially get an Omni Negate, a Search, and a Pop, or a Return, or something like that. It can't be destroyed. All in all, very, very solid. On top of that, you could discard this card in order to just wipe out your entire opponent's field. Meaning, if you equip something like a Lily, and then search out this card, you could just wipe your opponent's entire field. Kind of crazy. Also, if this card is equipped to a monster, you could just swap places and have this become the non-equipped card, but the monster that's on the field. Yeah. We have Empress, which is the reptile monster. It also discards to target a Therion monster in your spell or trap card zone to special summon it. This is good for like rank 8 spamming, but other than that, it's not really the greatest. And especially since it's a reptile deck card, it's not the greatest. And then we have Splight Smashers. Now, this card is actually Springin, Therion, and Splight stuff, or a Splight card, but technically it is a Therion card, and it special summons the Therion from the graveyard. So all in all, very strong. Also, it does do stuff for Splites. We'll get into that in a second. Alright, I've been talking about it for a while. Let's talk about Splites. So, Splites are a level 2, rank 2, a link 2 archetype, just all the 2s, that is centered around spamming out these high power level and rank and link 2s in order to set up pretty okay boards. But they're also incredibly powerful at just spamming themselves out and getting a whole bunch of advantage while doing it. So let's quickly do the card by card. We have Splight Pixies, which is probably one of the weaker cards. It's basically Colute, or a better distinction is Honest. It's basically just Honest for the archetype. If you control a rank or level 2, you can special summon this card from your hand. All of them have this same stipulation. Either it's a level or rank, or a level or link to monster. They special summon themselves for free. So basically, any other level 2, like Deep Sea Diva, for example, allows them to special summon themselves. Absolutely crazy. Also, during damage calculation, if any of your other level, rank, or link 2 monster battles an opponent's monster, you win that battle, basically. You gain attack, you send this card to the graveyard, your battling monster gains attack and defense equal to your opponent's monster's current attack until the end of this turn. Now, note that it says gains attack and defense, meaning even if your monster is in defense position, you still win combat. Right? So, there's that. And since it happens during damage calculation, absolutely insane. However, since it's searchable, you probably only play about 1. You could technically play more if you wanted to, but you don't need to. This card, if it is special summoned, you can add a Splight spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Now, it can special summon itself, so that's crazy. It just free special summon, search out a card. Okay. Red, on the other hand, doesn't search out anything when it is specialed. However, you contribute one other level, rank, or link to in order to negate the effect of a monster. Well, sorry, negate the activated effect of a monster effect your opponent activated. That sounded weird. Just negate an opponent's activated monster effect by attributing any of those monsters. Also, if it was a rank or link to, you could destroy the monster. Pretty nice. Blue searches out any monster when it is special summoned and special summons itself for free. Hooray. Carrot is the opposite of red in the fact that it negates spells and traps instead of monsters. So, carrot and red both negate, which means if you have both of these up, it's an omni-negate. And they're searchable. Not just with blue, but also with starter. Starter is basically quick draw, quick launch. It just, you special summon a Splight. However, you are locked out of special summoning monsters except for level, rank, and link 2s. Now, that might sound bad. What are you going to go into? It's not like you can go into like Apollosa, but trust me, it's not that big of a deal. We also have Gamma Burst, which is another basically just win combat kind of situation. You activate it, everybody gains 1400 attack and defense until the end of this turn. Yeah, 1400. I don't know why it's so much, but 1400, that puts this guy at like 36. No. 34, sorry. That puts your Splight, your gigantic Splight, into 3000 territory on both attack and defense. Also, you could banish it during your main phase, and then target a card you control, target a level, rank, or link 2, and then it gains 1400 until the end of your opponent's turn. Just make some really big boys, you know? And then we have Splight Smasher. Banish a Splight card from a hand or grave in order to banish, non-target banish, a monster you control, basically, and a card your opponent controls. Any card, by the way. Just any card. Just banish it. Just get rid of it. Gone. Goodbye. So, that's the main deck monsters. What are the payoffs? Well, let's talk about the actual Splight cards first. We have Gigantic Splight. This card is actually pretty crazy. For this card's Exi summon, you can also treat a Link 2 monster you control as a level 2. Why is this the case? I don't know, but it is. And it's any Link 2, including something like a Halqifibrax. Whoa, crazy. I know. So there you go. Also, if this card has a Fusion, Synchro, Exi, or Link monster as material, its original attack is doubled. Meaning, using something like a Halqifibrax makes it even stronger. Makes it a 3200 attack boy. During your main phase, you can activate this effect. Neither player can special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except for level, rank, or Link 2 monsters. Meaning, it literally insulates you from Nibiru. Yep. You activate the effect and you're Nibiru proof. That's not even the effect. It just... Now you're Nibiru proof. Huh? Detach a material from a card you control. You don't even have to detach it from this card. Just from a card you control. Special summon a level 2 monster from the deck. Any level 2 monster. Any of them. Do you see what's happening? Insane advantage. Any level 2 becomes that much more powerful. There you go. Moving on, we have, Splight Elf. This card, 2 monsters, including a level, rank, or Link 2 monster. Just any of them. Just as long as there's a level 2 in there. As long as there's a 2 in there, you're good to go. Cannot be used as Link material the turn it is Link summoned. Oh good, at least it's not broken. Your opponent cannot target monsters this card points to with card effects. Oh no, it gets better. Awesome. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target one level 2 monster in your graveyard, or if your opponent controls a monster, you could target a rank or Link 2 monster instead, special summon it. Huh. So I could Toad, tribute itself, and then special it back and make it untargetable. Fantastic. Do you see where this is going? Toad is currently limited to 1 in the OCG. It might be banned. Toad is absolutely insane with this deck. Now, it does require 2 Aqua monsters, which, to be fair, none of these guys are Aqua monsters, but that is easily, played around when you could just, play Deep Sea Diva. Or, frogs, like most of them are. Literally, just like, you play frogs, bada bing, bada boom, you get Toad. And now you got 2 activations of Toad because of Splight Elf. On top of the fact that you can also go into Splight Giant Gigantic Splight with the Splight Elf. It's starting to come together as to why this deck is powerful. However, let me tell you one more thing. With any of these guys, well, okay, not any of them. You can't use the fires. With any of your darks, if you have 2 of them out, you can go into Djinn Buster. This card is terrible because it is a level 2, it is a rank 2 that requires dark monsters. And that only negates one hand trap. And yet it's overpowered as all be. Because guess what? You can use this guy to just go into Splight Elf. And then recur your advantage, and then you're fine. But it also saves you from a hand trap. During either player's turn, when an effect of an opponent's monster is activated, detach 2 materials Negate the activation, inflict 500 to your opponent. Now remember how easy it is to special summon out these guys. You could search them, you could special them, there's a million ways to see them. Absolutely crazy. There you go. Also, with Zeus and Draco Future, the deck becomes even more powerful. I still don't know how this deck is tier 0, but, like, given the advantage, yeah, this deck is absolutely crazy. There are other decks that can contest it, notably the next one that we're going to talk about, Terra Elements. Terra Elements are kind of weird. They're basically Shadal's 2.0. They even use a lot of Shadal monsters in order to facilitate their strategy. Now, before we even talk about a Terra Element, let's talk about Visa Starfrost. This card goes hand in hand with this archetype. If this card is in your hand, you can target a monster you control with a different type and attribute, destroy the monster, special this card. Now, this is originally used with Scareclaw. To make this guy, right? That's the original archetype. I mean, Lightheart is literally just Visa, except a chibi. That's it. However, in Terra Elements, it can also be used. It does have actually a pretty good effect for Terra Elements. I don't know if it's played too often. I think it is played in a couple of decks here or there, but it's not something staple. Also, if this card destroys an opponent's card by battle, it gains half the original attack or defense of that monster, whichever is higher. Terra Elements are weird. If they are sent to the graveyard, they fusion summon. Any of their monsters, if they are sent to the graveyard by card effect, they fusion summon. I don't know why that's the case, but it is. Also, they're all Aquas except for this guy who's a warrior, but water. I don't know why the dark ones are Aqua and the water one is warrior, but anyway. Shaylen, during your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand, send a monster from your hand to the graveyard, then send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. Basically meaning, you special summon it, and then you get a fusion summon. That's the idea. You fusion summon by special summoning this card. Don't know why that's the case, but it is. Also, all of them have this effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck by placing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand, field, and or graveyard on the bottom of the deck in any order, including this card in your graveyard. Which basically means you fusion summon on just any time your card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, and you can go into any fusion. Any fusion. This is why it's paired with Shadals. You send Shadals to the graveyard, along with potentially a Terra Element, and then you fusion summon by sending everything back into the deck, and then you go into something like a Winda. Fantastic. Hip hip hooray. Now your opponent doesn't get to play the game. Also, they can special summon on their turn on the opponent's turn, mill cards, and potentially fusion summon, locking you out of special summoning with something like a Winda. Here's how. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. Just any monster effect that's activated, you special summon. Also, if you do, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And then, of course, it has the same stipulation as all of the other cards. Now, there is one card that is different, Rhino Heart. If it is normal or special, you can send a Terra Element monster from your deck to the graveyard, immediately proccing its fusion effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, special summon it, and if you do, send a Terra Element card from your hand to the graveyard. So, instead of fusion summoning, it special summons itself, which could potentially be used as other material for fusion summons. Myru is slightly different. Just if it's normal or special, you send the top 3 cards. Pretty simple. And then it has the same stipulation as all of the other darks. So, all in all, the idea is send one of these to the graveyard with the necessary materials, and then fusion summon. Now, what are you going to be fusion summoning into? Well, let's talk about that first. First of all, obviously, you can potentially go into things like your... it just depends on what fusion archetype you want to go into. You could go into Alistair. You could go into Shadal. You could go into Punk. You can go into whatever it is. Just whatever archetype that you want to go into that fusion summons, you can do it. However, they do have archetypal fusions. Namely, Collido Heart and Kit Kalos. So let's talk about Collido Heart. This one specifically requires Reno Heart and 2 Aqua monsters. As I said, they're all Aquas, except for this guy for some reason. But it cannot be used as fusion material, and if this card is special summoned by, or an Aqua monster is sent to the graveyard by card effect while this card is on the field, you can target a card your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Just, it's basically, Tri-Brigade, what have you, Tri-Brigade, Omen, Shureg, thank you. It's basically Shureg, except instead of banishing, it shovels, which is, well, I mean, it does target, but still. Also, if this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can special summon this card, and then send a Terra Element card from the graveyard. From the deck to the graveyard. So, it comes back, just, if it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, it comes back, and then you get to send a Terra Element to the grave, and then potentially fusion summon, again. Awesome. Now, it does have a once per turn on both of the effects, so there's that. Moving on to Kalos. If this card is special summoned, you can take a Terra Element card from your deck and either add it to the hand or send it to the graveyard. Again, fusion summoning, or just, adding a card. Then, you can target a card you control, or a monster you control, special summon a Terra Element monster from your hand or graveyard, send the targeted monster to the graveyard. So, you get a free special summon, which is additional material for potentially a fusion summon. If this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can send the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard. Grass is currently at 2 in the OCG. Now, granted, it's at 3 in Master Duel, but still, that's why this card is pretty good. Milling cards it's pretty good. You get a bunch of powerful effects by milling cards. So, makes sense, right? Let's move on, because it gets better. They have a field spell. It adds a Terra Element monster, or a Visa Starfrost, from your deck to your hand. Also, fusion summon monsters and Terra Element monsters gain 500 attack. Now, this guy was 3,000. This guy was 23. Those are some big guys. On top of that, if a monster is returned from the field and or graveyard to the deck or extra deck, target a card in the field, destroy it. Once per turn. This card shuffles, this card destroys, this card gains more advantage. They have interaction, and it's weird interaction, and, not the easiest to deal with kind of interaction. On top of the fact that they're fusion summoning during your turn, and they could potentially fusion summon into something like, I don't know, let's say Guardian Chimera. Okay, they're not actually doing that, but they can, because they're playing a fusion deck. They can make Guardian Chimera, and then all of a sudden you're sad, because Guardian Chimera is overpowered. Moving on, they have 3 traps, which make them even stronger. If you control a Terra Element monster or a Visa Starfrost, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, change it to face-down defense position, then send a Terra Element monster from your deck to the graveyard. Everything has this effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you could target a Terra Element monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So, if you chain this to something like a MST, and this card gets destroyed, not only do you get to flip a card face down, but you also get to add a card that you just sent. You can add a card that you just sent to your hand. Crazy. Salak is a continuous trap that says if you control a Terra Element monster or Visa Starfrost, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects, send a monster to the graveyard. Now, this one, if it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, adds a Terra Element monster from your deck to your hand. Crazy. And then, of course, they have a Omni Negate. It's basically 9 Pillars of the Yang Xing, except instead of destroying a monster, it sends a monster from hand to grave. And then also, if it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can target a banished Terra Element monster, add it to your hand. There you go. All in all, absolutely crazy, especially when paired with something like Shadal. This deck is pretty solid. There you go. There's Terra Elements. And there is one last deck that I want to talk about, that being Mist Rune. Mist Rune is a archetype full of fusion monsters and quick play spell cards to get out those fusion monsters. The main idea is to mill your opponent to death. I don't know why that's it, but that's what it does. We're going to start here with the field spell. You can activate Mist Rune quick play spell cards from your hand during your opponent's turn. Once per turn, if you activate a Mist Rune quick play spell card, you can target up to 3 Mist Rune quick play spell cards in your graveyard, place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, then draw that many cards. Yeah, it's a plus. It's a +3. I don't know why, but it is. So let's quickly do the rest of the cards. So they do have one continuous spell. If you control, you can only control 1 Deceit of the Mist Rune. Each time a quick play spell card is activated, banish the top card of your opponent's deck. So the whole idea is to banish cards. Instead of sending them to the graveyard, you banish them in order to mill your opponent out. So let's discuss it. Mist Rune of Destruction. Activate this. You activate one of these effects. Skip your next battle phase after this card resolves. Target a spell or trap card your opponent controls. Destroy it. Banish the top 4 cards of their deck. Or special summon a Mist Rune monster from the extra deck to the extra monster zone. Now, all of them have this secondary effect, but all of the first effects are different. So let's do just the first effects. Banish. They all also skip the next battle phase. Well, your next battle phase. There you go. Banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck up to the number of cards they control. Okay. Target 1 card or 1 opponent's special summoned monster. Destroy it. Banish the top 2 cards of their deck. Okay. Target a face-up monster on the field. Apply this effect to it. Then banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. Once applied, this turn, that monster cannot attack. Also, the next time it would be destroyed by battle or card effect, it is not destroyed. Again, okay, just can't attack. Good to know. Dispel, I wasn't naming these. This one was Raging Storm. This one was Brilliant Flame. Dispel. If your opponent adds a card from their deck to the hand, except during the draw phase, discard a random card from their hand, then banish 2 cards. Point of the Mist Rune. Add a Mist Rune card from your deck to your hand, except for Point of the Mist Rune, then banish the top card of your opponent's deck. Mist Rune of the Freezing Curse. Target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects. Then banish the top 3 cards of their deck. And Mist Rune of the Golden Droplets. Your opponent draws a card, then you banish the top 4 cards of their deck. That's it. That's all of their cards in the main deck. They don't have any monsters. However, for some reason, they do have fusion monsters. Because of course fusions. Fusions is the name of the game right now. So we have Fangs, or Jerry, Fangs of the Mist Rune. If this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can target 1 Mist Rune spell in your graveyard, except a quick play spell added to your hand. Cannot be destroyed by card effects. When this card is destroyed by battle, target a card in the field, destroy it. There you go. Has to be destroyed by battle. You can prevent your opponent from battling with this one. Yada yada. There you go. Difficult to deal with. Also, it destroys cards. Absolutely insane. However, notably, if you don't have something like Spring, the deck becomes more problematic. Not terrible, but more problematic. Then we have Moonin, Wings of the Mist Rune. If this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you could discard a card, add a Mist Rune continuous spell from your deck to your hand, making this searchable. Hooray! Especially since all of these basically allow you to fusion summon. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a Mist Rune card and or set card you control, banish this card you control, negate the activation, destroy the card, and then during the end phase, gain 1,000 life points. Woo! And then lastly, we have Hugin, Wings of the Mist Rune. They're both wings. This one was a dog. Anyway, if this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can discard a card, add a Mist Rune's field spell from your deck to your hand. If another card you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. If this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, return this card to the extra deck. Basically meaning you can constantly recur it. The other two don't do that, but because you always will have this one, it means you can always search out the field spell as well as protect it. Hooray. And that's the general idea. Just banish cards your opponent controls and protect the field spell. Pretty interesting deck. And it actually contends with the Splight meta that I will show you. Mist Rune, it's up there. It exists. Look at it. 3.5%. You know, Splites are everywhere, but it's there. It exists. Oop. So yeah, there you go. Mist Runes are surprisingly competent. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention was where I was getting my information for a lot of this stuff, and it is roadoftheking.com. You can go check them out. They post a lot about the OCG, and this is currently what's happening in the OCG as of week 8 and 9, I believe. From the 21st of May to the 1st of June. This is what the meta looked like. So, as we can see, splites are everywhere. There have been several tournaments where they have tier 0 status, and several others where Terra Elements are just as competitive with them. So, it's kind of interesting to see where and what people consider to be top tier or the most playable. A lot of people are playing Terra Elements, a lot of people are playing Splites, and basically that's it. There are a few other strategies in there, as you can see, but it's a lot of Splite. As you can see, most of it is pure Splite. There was one person playing Adventurer Splite. However, with Terra Elements, they are mostly actually being played with a bunch of other archetypes. Things like Danger, things like Branded, things like Shaddoll's I've seen as well as Ishizu, which I believe is the new graveyard support, or like, not graveyard. Necro Valley, Gravekeeper support. We also have Eldritch, because of course we do. Mist Rune is still there, also being played with Splite. We do have Shaddol, as you can see, Terra Element, Shaddol mostly. That's kind of it. Just different versions of it. A lot of Grass as well, since Grass is at 2 in the OCG. More Splite. Yeah, so while it may look like Splite's not tier 0, when you start to scroll down and see, oh yeah, people are also playing like Splite Evil Twin and Splite Tri-Brigade and other such stuff, you start to realize, yeah, it's actually just that strong. So I mentioned that Splites were everywhere and had tier 0 representation. Here is a YCCS, which is similar to a YCS, and this is the top 32. 22 are playing Splites, 7 of which are playing tier elements, 1 Punk and 1 Eldritch, one Eldritch and 1 Punk, and 1 Adventure. So yeah, there you go. That's the representation. This is what we got to look forward to. But that's going to be it for this episode. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy it and found it useful. And yeah, just look out for these archetypes in the TCG as well as in Master Duel. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy it. If you did, a like is very much appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.